The moment they lowered my husband's casket into the ground, my phone vibrated inside my black purse. I almost ignored it. After 38 years of marriage, Robert was gone, and I could barely breathe through the sound of the rain and the pastor's final words. But when I looked down, I saw a message from an unknown number. Don't leave the cemetery until you check the blue folder in the garage. Robert lied to you for years. My hands went numb because my husband had died 3 days earlier. And only Robert and I knew there was a blue folder hidden behind an old toolbox in our garage. As thunder rolled above the cemetery, I looked toward my husband's coffin and realized something terrifying. I might not have known the man I had loved for nearly 4 decades. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to ask you something. If you were standing at your spouse's funeral and received a message like this, would you open that folder or walk away forever? Please share your thoughts in the comments, because I truly want to know how you would react. And if you're listening tonight from somewhere in the world, tell me your city and the current time where you are. These stories remind us that none of us grieve alone. If this story touches your heart, please like and subscribe so we can continue these conversations together. My name is Margaret Collins, and I was 62 years old when I buried my husband. Even now, I still remember the cold rain falling onto the black umbrellas at Oakwood Cemetery in Columbus, Ohio. The sky looked bruised heavy with dark clouds that seemed unwilling to let the day end. People I had known for years hugged me, whispered their condolences, and disappeared one by one until only my daughter Susan and I remained beside Robert's grave. The text message sat on my phone screen. Don't leave the cemetery until you check the blue folder in the garage. Robert lied to you for years. I must have read those words 20 times. Susan noticed my face. Mom, are you okay? I quickly locked my phone. Just a message from church. She looked exhausted. At 36, my daughter had inherited Robert's dark eyes and stubborn expression. She had spent the previous 3 days arranging flowers, handling funeral paperwork, and answering calls that I could no longer bear to answer myself. We should go home, she said softly. Home. The word hurt. For 38 years, Robert and I had lived in the same white colonial house on Maple Street. We had raised Susan there. We had argued there, laughed there, celebrated birthdays and Christmas mornings there. Now I would walk through that front door alone. Robert had died on a Thursday morning. The doctors called it a massive heart attack. He had collapsed in our kitchen while making coffee. One moment, he had been asking whether I wanted cinnamon rolls for breakfast. And the next, he was lying on the floor, his coffee mug shattered beside him. I still remembered the sound of the ambulance, the flashing lights, the emergency room doctor removing his glasses before speaking. I'm very sorry. 3 simple words. 3 words that split my entire life into before and after. Robert had been 65. He worked as an insurance claims manager for almost 40 years before retiring. He was not perfect. He could be stubborn. He hated discussing emotions. He left dirty coffee cups everywhere. But he had always come home. Always. Or at least I believed he had. As Susan drove us back from the cemetery, I stared through the passenger window while rain streaked across the glass. Dad seemed worried these last few months, Susan suddenly said. I looked at her. What do you mean? She shrugged. I don't know. Distracted, maybe. He was getting older. Maybe. She kept her eyes on the road. I wanted to ask more questions, but my thoughts returned to the message. The blue folder. Only Robert and I knew about it. Years earlier, after his father died, Robert had stored several family documents inside an old blue folder and hidden it behind a rusty toolbox in the garage. He once told me, if anything ever happens to me, you'll know where important papers are. But we had never discussed it again. How could a stranger know? When we arrived home, casseroles from neighbors covered the kitchen counters. Flowers filled every room. Sympathy cards sat beside the telephone. The house felt unfamiliar, too quiet. Susan made coffee while I stood in the living room staring at Robert's recliner. His reading glasses still rested beside the lamp. His slippers remained on the floor. His jacket still hung by the front door. People say grief comes in waves. For me, it came in objects. Every object became evidence that someone no longer existed. Susan handed me a cup. "You should rest." "I can't." She sat beside me. "We'll get through this." I nodded, but my attention drifted toward the garage door. "The blue folder. Robert lied to you for years." The words repeated themselves inside my head. By 6 o'clock, Susan finally left. She kissed my forehead. "Call me if you need anything." "I will." After her car disappeared down the street, silence settled over the house. I stood in the kitchen for several minutes. Then I picked up the garage key. The garage smelled exactly as it always had: motor oil, old wood grass clippings, and Robert's aftershave. His workbench stood against the wall covered with screws, nails, and half-finished projects. For a moment, I almost turned around. I suddenly felt guilty. Robert had been dead only 3 days. What kind of wife searched for secrets before the funeral flowers had even wilted? But the message had planted something inside me. Fear. I walked toward the old metal toolbox. My hands shook. Behind it, covered in dust, sat the blue folder, exactly where Robert had left it years ago. I pulled it out. The cardboard edges were worn. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. Inside, however, I found only insurance papers, tax records, and several documents from Robert's parents' estate. Nothing unusual, no photographs, no letters, no secrets. I sat down on the garage stool. Perhaps someone had played a cruel joke. Perhaps I was allowing grief to make me irrational. I placed everything back inside the folder. As I stood up, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. My blood turned cold. I opened the message. "You looked in the wrong section. Check underneath the papers. He wanted you to know the truth eventually." I nearly dropped the phone, because underneath the stack of documents was a cardboard divider. And beneath that divider was a sealed brown envelope. I stared at it. I was absolutely certain it had not been visible before. My fingers trembled as I lifted the envelope. Across the front, written in Robert's handwriting, were 4 words. "For Margaret, if necessary." I could barely breathe. Outside, thunder rolled across the Ohio sky. Inside the garage, surrounded by my dead husband's tools, I realized that Robert had left something behind specifically for me. Something he never wanted me to find unless it became necessary. And somehow, a complete stranger knew exactly where it was. I carried the envelope into the kitchen, but couldn't bring myself to open it. Instead, I sat at our dining table, the same table where Robert and I had eaten thousands of meals, the same table where he had proposed to me 39 years earlier. I ran my fingers across his handwriting. For Margaret, if necessary. What did necessary mean? Why hadn't he told me, and who was sending the messages? At nearly 8 o'clock that evening, my phone rang. Susan. "Mom?" "Yes." "I forgot to ask. Did anyone text you today?" My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" There was a long pause. Then my daughter quietly said something that made my entire body freeze. "Dad got a strange text 2 days before he died. I saw it on his phone." I gripped the envelope harder. "What text?" Another silence. "I don't remember exactly, but I remember one sentence." My voice barely worked. "What sentence?" Susan inhaled slowly. It said, "She deserves to know the truth before the funeral." Susan's words stayed with me long after our phone call ended. She deserves to know the truth before the funeral. I sat alone in the kitchen while rain tapped against the windows. The brown envelope rested beside my coffee cup. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked loudly enough to make the entire house feel alive. For the first time in 38 years, I was afraid of my husband. Not of Robert himself, but of the possibility that the man I loved had lived another life beside mine. At 9 o'clock, I finally opened the envelope. Inside, I found only 3 things: a small silver key, a folded sheet of paper, and a bank receipt. The paper contained just one sentence written in Robert's careful handwriting. "If you are reading this, please don't judge me until you know everything." That was all. No explanation, no signature, nothing. My eyes moved to the bank receipt. The account belonged to a credit union in Lexington, Kentucky. I frowned. Robert and I had never lived in Kentucky. We had never vacationed there. Neither of us had family there. The receipt showed regular deposits stretching back nearly 11 years, small amounts at first. $300, $500, later, nearly $1,000 every month. My breathing became shallow. Where had that money gone? Why had he hidden it? And what did the silver key open? My phone vibrated again. A known number. I stared at it for several seconds before opening the message. The account is still active. He was trying to protect someone. Someone. Not himself. Not money. Someone. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I typed my first reply. "Who are you?" Several minutes passed. No answer. I sent another. "How do you know my husband?" Nothing. I looked around the empty kitchen. For a ridiculous moment, I almost expected Robert to walk through the back door carrying groceries like he had done thousands of times before. Instead, only silence answered me. At 10 o'clock, I walked upstairs to our bedroom. Robert's closet door remained partially open. His shirts still hung exactly where he had left them. Blue dress shirts, golf shirts, winter jackets. I touched one of his sweaters. The scent of his cologne still lingered. Suddenly, I remembered something. 3 months before his death, I had walked into our bedroom unexpectedly. Robert had been sitting on the edge of the bed, holding his phone. He looked startled, almost frightened. "Everything okay?" I had asked. He quickly locked the screen. "Just work." "But you're retired," he smiled. "Old habits." At the time, I hadn't thought much about it. After nearly 4 decades of marriage, you stop questioning every small thing. You trust. You assume. You believe you know someone. Now every memory seemed different. 2 years earlier, Robert had driven to Kentucky for what he called a fishing trip with an old coworker. Last Christmas, he spent an entire afternoon in his office with the door closed. Several times he had received calls and stepped outside to answer them. Had I ignored the signs, or had there been no signs at all? I hardly slept. Around 3 in the morning, I found myself sitting in Robert's office downstairs. The desk lamp cast soft light across stacks of papers and old family photographs. I opened drawers, tax files, insurance documents, retirement accounts. Nothing unusual. Then I opened the bottom drawer. Inside sat Robert's old cell phone, the one he had replaced nearly 2 years earlier. I knew the passcode, our anniversary, June 17, 1988. The phone turned on. The battery still held a charge. My heart began racing. Messages, contacts, photos. I searched through them. Most were ordinary. Family pictures, vacation photographs, texts from Susan, emails from old friends. Then I found a contact without a name, only a single letter, L. There were dozens of messages. Most had been deleted. Only a few remained. One read, "She's asking questions." Another, "I promised I would take care of it." And another, "Margaret cannot know yet." My eyes filled with tears. Margaret. Me. He had written about me. But to whom? L. A woman. A man. A friend. I checked the phone number. Kentucky area code. The same state listed on the bank receipt. At 4 a.m, exhaustion finally forced me upstairs. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling until sunlight entered through the curtains. The next morning, Susan arrived with groceries. She immediately noticed my face. "You didn't sleep." "No." She placed bags on the kitchen counter. "Mom, you look terrible." I almost told her everything. Almost. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was the text messages. Perhaps it was Robert's note asking me not to judge him. Or perhaps I needed to understand things myself first. Instead, I asked, "Tell me about the message you saw on Dad's phone." Susan looked uncomfortable. "It was only for a second." "When?" "The Tuesday before he died." "What exactly did it say?" She thought for a moment. "He was in the kitchen. His phone lit up. I wasn't trying to snoop." And she hesitated. "It said, 'She deserves to know the truth before the funeral.'" "The funeral?" "Maybe it said before it's too late. I don't remember exactly." She sat down. "Mom, are you worried about something?" I forced a smile. No. But Susan knew me too well. "You found something, didn't you?" I looked away. She reached across the table. "Mom." I finally showed her the bank receipt. Her eyes widened. "What is this?" "I don't know." "And Kentucky?" "I don't know." She looked genuinely confused. Dad never mentioned Kentucky. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Then Susan said something unexpected. "Maybe he was helping somebody. With 11 years of payments." She shrugged. "Dad helped people." That was true. Robert had quietly paid medical bills for his sister years earlier. He had loaned money to friends. He volunteered at church. But why hide it from me? At noon, Susan left for work. I stood at the front window, watching her drive away. A strange feeling settled over me. The feeling that everyone knew something except me. The phone buzzed again. "A known number." I opened the message. "The person in Kentucky doesn't know Robert is dead." My heart stopped. Another message arrived immediately. "She believes he is coming next week." I stared at the words. She. A woman. There was no other explanation. My husband had been sending money to a woman in Kentucky for 11 years. He had hidden the account. He had exchanged messages, and now she was waiting for him. I felt physically sick. 38 years. 38 years of marriage. Had Robert been living 2 lives? My hands trembled as I walked back into his office. I opened the old phone again. I selected the contact marked L. For nearly 10 minutes, I simply stared at the number. Then I pressed call. The line rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Finally, a woman's voice answered. "Hello." She sounded older. Maybe 60. Maybe 70. I couldn't speak. "Hello." My throat tightened. "Who is this?" she asked. I almost ended the call. Instead, I whispered, "My name is Margaret Collins." Silence. Long silence. Then the woman quietly said words that turned my entire world upside down. "Oh my God!" Another pause, and then, "Robert never told you about me, did he?" For several seconds, I couldn't answer. The woman on the phone breathed quietly on the other end of the line. "My husband died 3 days ago," I finally whispered. The silence that followed felt endless. "Oh, dear God," the woman said. Her voice broke. "I didn't know." Neither of us spoke. I sat in Robert's office, gripping the edge of his desk so tightly that my fingers hurt. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Linda." The name meant nothing to me. "I think we need to talk," she said gently. My throat tightened. "Were you having an affair with my husband?" she immediately answered. "No." The answer came so quickly that I almost believed her. Almost. "Then why was he sending you money?" Another silence. "Margaret, I don't think I should explain this over the phone." Anger suddenly rose inside me. "My husband is dead. I just buried him. I've discovered secret bank accounts and hidden messages. I deserve answers." "I know." "Then tell me." She exhaled slowly. "Robert was helping me. For 11 years. Yes." "Why?" "Because he promised someone he would." Someone. Again. Always someone. Not her. Not him. Someone else. "Who?" "I can't explain tonight." I nearly laughed. "Everybody keeps saying that." "Margaret." "No. I have spent 38 years believing I knew my husband." "You did know him." "Apparently I didn't." Her voice became softer. "Your husband was a good man." Tears suddenly filled my eyes. "Then why did he hide you?" She didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded tired. "Because Robert believed telling you would hurt you." The call ended 20 minutes later. She refused to explain further. She gave me her address in Lexington. She said I could visit whenever I was ready. And before hanging up, she said something that disturbed me even more. Robert was very worried before he died. Worried about what? That the truth would reach you the wrong way. After the call ended, I sat alone in Robert's office until nearly midnight. His old phone still lay beside me. I opened the contact named L again. There were no romantic messages, no "I love you," no hearts, no photographs, nothing that clearly suggested an affair. But there were years of missing texts, deleted conversations, unknown history. I finally went upstairs. Sleep never came. Every sound inside the house felt unfamiliar. The furnace, the pipes, the refrigerator. At one point, I almost called Susan. But what would I say? Your father had a secret woman in Kentucky. Your father sent money to someone for 11 years. Your father hid part of his life from us. The next morning, I made coffee exactly the way Robert liked it. 2 cups. I only realized my mistake when I placed the second cup beside his empty chair. Grief is strange. Your body continues believing someone exists even after your mind knows they are gone. As I poured the second cup into the sink, the doorbell rang. My neighbor Carol stood outside holding muffins. She hugged me tightly. "How are you doing?" People kept asking that question. No one truly wanted the answer. "I'm managing." She sat with me for nearly an hour. She talked about church, about grandchildren, about ordinary things. Normal things. I envied her. I wanted my life to feel normal again. When she finally left, I returned to Robert's office. Something continued bothering me. The silver key? I still didn't know what it opened. I searched the house. Desk drawers, file cabinets, closets. Nothing. Around noon, I opened Robert's closet again. As I moved several jackets aside, something fell from an upper shelf. A photograph. My heart stopped. It was old, at least 10 years old. Robert stood outside a small white house. Beside him was a woman. Linda. I recognized her immediately from her voice somehow, although I couldn't explain why. She appeared to be around my age. Gray hair, kind eyes, and standing between them was a young woman, perhaps 18, dark hair, blue jeans. She was smiling. Robert had his hand resting gently on her shoulder. I felt physically sick. There it was. The evidence. The hidden family. The second life. I turned the photograph over. On the back, Robert had written, Summer 2016. Emily's graduation. Emily. Who was Emily? Their daughter. His daughter. The room suddenly felt too small. I sat on the bed and stared at the picture. 38 years. 38 years of marriage. Had my husband attended another girl's graduation while pretending to attend business conferences? Had he spent holidays elsewhere? Birthdays, weekends? I began crying. Not quiet tears. Not graceful tears. The kind that shake your entire body. Because the worst part of betrayal isn't anger. It's humiliation. The feeling that everyone else knew while you remained the only fool in the room. At 3 o'clock, Susan arrived unexpectedly. She carried Chinese takeout. The moment she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. What happened? I showed her the photograph. She stared at it. Her expression changed. Not shock, recognition. My heart sank. You've seen this before. Susan looked away. No, don't lie to me. She sat down slowly. Mom, you know who they are. She rubbed her forehead. Dad told me years ago that he was helping someone. My entire body froze. You knew, not everything, when, maybe 6 years ago, I could barely breathe. And you didn't tell me. He asked me not to. I stood up. Your father had another woman. I don't know that. Look at this picture. She stared at the photograph. I asked him once, and he said they were family. What family? He wouldn't tell me. I felt anger rising toward my daughter. How could you keep this from me? Because he was my father, and I'm your mother. Tears appeared in Susan's eyes. He said one day you'd understand. The same sentence. Again. One day. Later. Eventually. Everyone seemed convinced that answers existed somewhere. But nobody would tell me. I walked into the kitchen. Susan followed me. Mom, Dad loved you. How do you know? Because I know him. I laughed bitterly. Apparently, none of us did. That evening, Susan left quietly. Before leaving, she touched the photograph. I've never seen the girl before. Emily. Who is she? I shook my head. I don't know. After she drove away, I picked up the photograph again. Robert, Linda, Emily, a family. Maybe not his family. Maybe exactly his family. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I no longer felt surprised. The message contained only one sentence. Emily still believes Robert was her father. I stared at the words. Father, not friend, not helper. Father. And before I could even process that message, another one arrived. The truth is in the safety deposit box. The silver key is yours now. I barely slept that night. The words from the text message repeated in my mind. Emily still believes Robert was her father. The silver key sat on my nightstand. The photograph rested beside it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Robert standing next to Linda and the young woman whose smile looked strangely familiar. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I was going to Kentucky. Not next week. Not after I gathered my emotions. Not after I spoke to lawyers or family. Today, at 7 in the morning, I called Susan. Mom, I'm driving to Lexington. Silence. What? I need answers. By yourself? Yes. Mom, you haven't slept. I know. Please wait a few days. I've waited 38 years. She sighed. Is this about the woman? Yes. Another pause. I'll come with you. No. Mom, I need to do this alone. She understood that tone in my voice, the same tone I had used years earlier when my own mother died, the tone that meant my mind was already made up. The drive from Columbus to Lexington took a little over 3 hours. Rain followed me for most of the trip. Robert and I had driven those highways many times while visiting Tennessee or North Carolina. Yet somehow, I had never once stopped in Kentucky. Never once asked why he occasionally traveled there. Perhaps because I trusted him. Perhaps because marriage teaches us to stop asking questions. The address Linda gave me led to a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Lexington. Small houses, large trees, front porches, American flags. Nothing about it looked secret. Nothing about it looked like the place where my husband had hidden another life. The White House stood at the end of a narrow street, the same house from the photograph. My hands trembled as I parked. For several minutes, I remained inside the car. Part of me wanted to drive away. Another part wanted to march to the door and demand the truth. Finally, the front door opened. A woman stepped outside. Linda. She looked almost exactly as she had in the photograph. Gray hair, gentle face, around my age. She wore a blue sweater and held both hands tightly together. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. I was looking at the woman who had occupied my husband's secret life. She was looking at the wife he had hidden from her. I've been expecting you, she said quietly. I stepped out of the car. Did you know he died? She nodded. You told me. No, before yesterday. Her eyes filled with tears. I found out 2 days ago. How? She looked away. I received a message. The cold feeling returned immediately. A text message. Yes. My heart started pounding. From who? I don't know. We stood there in silence. The same person who had contacted me had contacted her. Suddenly I realized that neither of us understood what was happening. Linda invited me inside. The house smelled like coffee and cinnamon. Family photographs covered the walls. Some included Linda. Some included a young woman. And several included Robert. I stopped walking. There he was, my husband, smiling, standing beside Linda and the girl. Christmas photographs, birthday pictures, graduation photographs. Nearly 15 years of memories. My knees weakened. You told me there wasn't an affair. There wasn't. I turned toward her. Then explain these. She sat down slowly. Please. I remained standing. Robert met me 12 years ago. How? I was working at a nursing home. I frowned. My mother was there. My breathing stopped. My mother? She nodded. Your mother-in-law. I sat down. The room suddenly felt very small. Robert visited her every week. My mother-in-law died 13 years ago. Yes. Linda folded her hands. I was one of her nurses. That wasn't the answer I expected. After she died, Robert continued checking on me. Why? Her eyes filled with tears. Because my daughter was sick. I said nothing. Emily had kidney problems, medical bills. We were losing the house. And Robert paid. He helped. Why would my husband support a complete stranger for 11 years? Linda looked toward one of the photographs. Because he felt responsible. The answer made no sense. Responsible for what? She hesitated. I promised him I wouldn't tell you. My anger returned. My husband is dead. I know. I'm tired of hearing promises. She looked exhausted. I can't explain all of it. I stood up. Then why did you ask me to come here? I didn't send the messages. I stopped. What? I never texted you. Who did? I don't know. I stared at her. She looked genuinely frightened. 2 days ago, I received a message saying Robert had died and that Margaret would contact me. Margaret, she nodded. Your name. The room became silent. Someone knew me. Someone knew Linda. Someone knew Robert. And they wanted us together. At that moment, the front door opened. A young woman entered carrying grocery bags. She stopped immediately when she saw me. She looked exactly like the girl in the photographs. Older now, perhaps 28, dark hair, blue eyes, tired expression. Linda stood. Emily. The young woman looked at me. Who is this? Linda swallowed. This is Margaret. Emily's face changed. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then she quietly said, Robert's wife. Not a question, a statement. She already knew. I felt suddenly cold. You knew about me. Emily nodded. Of course. I looked at Linda. You told her. Emily answered before she could. No, Robert did. I stared at her. When? Years ago. My voice barely worked. And what exactly did he tell you? She placed the grocery bags on the counter. He told me he loved his wife. The answer stunned me. He said he could never hurt you. I looked between them. Nothing made sense. Nothing. If Robert loved me, why hide them? If there was no affair, why the lies? Emily finally sat down across from me. Her eyes were red. She looked exhausted. Is it true? She asked quietly. What? That he's dead. I nodded. She began crying. Not dramatically, not loudly, just silent tears running down her face. And suddenly, I realized something terrible. This young woman was grieving my husband. The same man I had buried. The same man whose closet still held his clothes. The same man who had kissed me goodbye every morning. After several minutes, Emily wiped her eyes. I always thought someday he'd tell you. Tell me what? She looked directly into my eyes. Something about her expression frightened me. Because it wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was sadness, deep sadness. And then she said the words that changed everything. For 28 years, I believed Robert Collins was my father. For a moment, nobody moved. The grandfather clock in Linda's living room ticked softly, while Emily sat across from me with tears in her eyes. I heard her words again. For 28 years, I believed Robert Collins was my father. I looked at her, then at Linda, then at the photographs covering the walls. My husband's face seemed to follow me from every direction. "When did you find out?" I finally asked. Emily wiped her eyes. 3 years ago. "You discovered he wasn't your father?" She nodded. "Robert told me." I felt my chest tighten. "He told you the truth?" "Part of it." Linda looked down at her hands. I never wanted her to believe that. "Then why let her?" I asked. Neither woman answered. For several seconds, anger returned. Not only toward Robert, toward both of them. My husband had died. My marriage had shattered. And these strangers seemed to possess pieces of his life that I never knew existed. Emily stood and walked toward a cabinet. She opened a drawer and removed a small wooden box. "I think he wanted you to see this." She handed it to me. Inside were birthday cards, Christmas cards, graduation cards, every one of them signed by Robert. Some said, "Proud of you." Others, "Keep believing in yourself." One card from her 16th birthday read, "No matter what happens, I will always be here for you." I felt sick. Those words sounded like a father, not a family friend, not a charity donor, a father. "When was your birthday?" I asked. "October 10th. I remembered. Several times over the years, Robert had traveled in October. Business conferences, insurance seminars, training sessions. I suddenly wondered whether any of those trips had ever existed. Emily sat back down. I loved him. The simple honesty in her voice hurt more than anger would have. "Did he love you?" "Yes." The answer cut deeply, because I had spent 3 days mourning my husband, and now I was sitting across from another woman grieving him too. Not a mistress, not a lover, something else, something I still couldn't understand. I took a deep breath. "Tell me everything." Emily looked toward her mother. Linda nodded slowly. "I met Robert when I was 16, Emily began. He came to the nursing home to visit his mother. Mom worked there." She smiled sadly. "He brought me books." I frowned. "Books?" "I loved reading." She pointed toward a bookshelf. Many of the books still stood there. Several contained handwritten notes. For Emily, "Keep dreaming." Robert. "He helped me with school." "He attended your graduation." She nodded. "He paid for part of my college." My throat tightened. "Did you call him Dad?" "Sometimes." The room became silent. I wanted to hate her. Part of me truly did. But she looked heartbroken, confused, lost, just like me. "What happened 3 years ago?" I asked. Emily looked down. "I took a DNA test." My eyes widened. "My boyfriend bought one online. It was supposed to be fun." She smiled bitterly. "It wasn't. The results showed no biological connection." She confronted Linda. Linda cried. Robert drove to Kentucky, and finally they told her the truth. "What truth?" Emily looked at me. "I don't know who my father is." I blinked. "What?" "My mother never told me." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I was young." "How young?" 19. The room became quiet again. Emily continued. Robert promised Mom that he would stay in my life. Why? Linda spoke softly. Because he felt guilty. The same answer again. Responsible. Guilty. Promises. Always the same words. Never the explanation. I finally lost patience. What exactly did Robert feel guilty about? Linda looked frightened. Emily looked confused. Neither answered. My voice rose. My husband is dead. I deserve the truth. Linda began crying. I can't. Why? Because it isn't my secret. That answer shocked me. Not her secret. Whose secret? Robert's, someone else's. At that exact moment, Emily's phone vibrated. She looked at the screen. Her face turned pale. What is it? Linda asked. Emily slowly handed me the phone. Unknown number. The message read, Ask Linda about Daniel. My heart nearly stopped. Linda's face lost all color. She stood up immediately. No. Who is Daniel? I asked. She shook her head. No. Emily stared at her mother. Mom. Linda began crying. Real crying, the kind that comes from years of buried pain. I can't do this. She walked toward the kitchen. Emily followed. I remained frozen on the couch. Daniel. The name meant something. Something distant. Something buried. Then suddenly I remembered. Robert's younger brother. Daniel Collins. I had not heard his name in over 20 years. Daniel had disappeared from family gatherings long ago. Robert rarely spoke about him. Whenever I asked, he simply said, he made some bad decisions. That was all. No details, no explanations. My breathing became shallow. Could Daniel somehow be connected? Emily returned alone. My mom needs a minute. I nodded. Did Robert ever mention Daniel? Her eyes widened. You know him. He was Robert's brother. Emily looked genuinely surprised. I've heard the name. When? She hesitated. Once. What did Robert say? She thought carefully. He said Daniel hurt a lot of people. My stomach tightened. Hurt how? He never explained. Outside, rain began falling against the windows. The same rain that had fallen during Robert's funeral. The same rain that seemed to follow every new secret. I looked at Emily. For the first time, I truly studied her face. She didn't resemble Robert. Not his eyes, not his smile, not his expressions. In fact, she didn't resemble Linda very much either. How had nobody questioned it? Perhaps because love makes us accept the stories we need. She suddenly asked, What was he like? The question surprised me. Robert. She nodded. When he was home. I swallowed. He loved gardening. She smiled. He loved old movies. She smiled again. He made terrible pancakes. She laughed softly. For nearly 30 minutes we talked. Not about secrets, not about lies, only about Robert. And gradually I realized something. Emily knew parts of him. I knew other parts. Neither of us had known the whole man. Eventually Linda returned. She looked exhausted. She sat beside us. I'm sorry. I remained quiet. She looked directly at me. There was never an affair. Then tell me. She took a long breath. Robert met me because of his mother. I nodded. He stayed because of Emily. Why? Her eyes filled with tears again. Because he believed he owed us. owed you for what? She looked down. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Because Daniel destroyed our lives. I felt cold. Robert's brother, the missing brother, the forgotten brother, the man nobody spoke about. Emily looked confused. Mom. Linda turned toward her daughter. Tears rolled down her face. I think it's finally time. My heart pounded. The rain outside grew stronger, and then Linda whispered the words that changed everything again. Emily Robert was never your father. She looked toward me. But Daniel Collins might be. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. The rain hammered against the windows while Linda sat with tears streaming down her face. Emily stared at her mother in disbelief. I felt as though the floor beneath me had disappeared. Mom, Emily whispered. What are you saying? Linda covered her face. I'm saying Robert was never your father. Emily shook her head. No. I should have told you years ago. No. Her voice became louder. You said you didn't know who my father was. Linda finally looked at her. I lied. The room seemed to freeze. I sat motionless on the couch, barely breathing. The name Daniel Collins echoed inside my head. Robert's younger brother. The man nobody discussed. The man who disappeared from family photographs almost 20 years earlier. Emily stood up. Who is Daniel? Linda looked toward me. I realized she expected me to explain. I swallowed. He was Robert's younger brother. Emily blinked. You knew him? Very little. Why? Robert rarely spoke about him. Linda wiped her eyes. Because Robert spent most of his life protecting him. The words struck me harder than I expected. Protecting him. Suddenly, dozens of old memories returned. Robert refusing to discuss family gatherings, arguments with his mother, phone calls that ended abruptly, his refusal to visit certain relatives. At the time, I thought it was ordinary family conflict. Now everything looked different. Emily sat down slowly. Tell me. Linda nodded. 29 years earlier, she had been 19 years old. She worked evenings at a small diner outside Lexington while attending nursing classes. One night, she met Daniel Collins. He was charming, Linda said. He was funny, confident. He talked about starting his own business. She smiled sadly. He made me feel important. I knew that type of man. Daniel had always been handsome. Robert once showed me an old family picture. The brothers looked similar, but Daniel carried himself differently. Robert was dependable. Daniel was exciting. Linda continued. He stayed in Kentucky for several months. He told me he loved me. Emily sat perfectly still. He promised we would move together. What happened? I asked. Linda's eyes filled with tears again. He disappeared. Emily looked down. And you were pregnant. Linda nodded. I didn't even know where he lived. She explained that Daniel had used only his first name. No address, no family information, nothing. Several months later, while working at the nursing home, she met Robert. He came to visit his mother. Over time, he saw Linda's pregnancy. He asked questions. Eventually, she showed him an old photograph. Robert immediately recognized his brother. I felt cold. My husband had discovered that his younger brother had abandoned a pregnant woman. And then? Emily asked. Linda looked toward her daughter. Robert was furious. I could imagine that. Robert hated irresponsible people. He believed promises mattered. He believed family mattered. He tried finding Daniel. Did he? Linda shook her head. No one knew where he was. I remembered. Around that time, Robert's mother became seriously ill. His father had already passed away. The family was struggling. Perhaps Daniel had simply disappeared. He wanted to tell the police, Linda said. But there was no crime. Emily sat quietly. So he stayed. Linda nodded. He helped. Why? He felt responsible for his brother. I finally understood. Not guilty because of himself. Guilty because of Daniel. Robert had spent nearly 30 years trying to repair damage he didn't create. Emily looked at me. He came to every school play. Her voice shook. Every graduation. She smiled sadly. He taught me to drive. Tears filled her eyes. He took me fishing. The room became silent. For a moment, I stopped thinking about betrayal. Instead, I saw Robert exactly as he had always been. The man who helped neighbors. The man who donated money quietly. The man who fixed broken fences. The man who couldn't walk past someone in pain. Perhaps he had simply done what Robert always did. He had carried someone else's burden. But one question remained. Why didn't he tell me? Linda lowered her head. Because he was afraid. Of what? Hurting you. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the rain had slowed. For the first time since the funeral, my anger felt different, smaller, more complicated. Because if Robert had been having an affair, I could hate him. If he had another family, I could condemn him. But if he had spent decades protecting a woman and child abandoned by his own brother, what was I supposed to feel? Emily suddenly spoke. He wanted to tell you. I turned. What? He talked about it last year. When he visited in September, my heart tightened. He said secrets become heavier as people get older. That sounded exactly like Robert. He said he was tired. I sat down again. He said he never meant to lie to you. My eyes filled with tears, because that sentence sounded like my husband, not the mysterious stranger I had imagined, the man I married. Linda stood. There is something else. My stomach tightened. Always something else. She walked into another room and returned carrying an old envelope. I promised Robert I would keep this. She handed it to me. My hands trembled. The envelope contained several papers. One was a birth certificate, Emily's. The father's name was blank. Another paper showed a DNA testing company. My eyes widened. The results indicated probability of biological relationship between Daniel Collins and Emily Walker, 99.7%. Emily stared at the document. Linda began crying again. I received the results 3 years ago. Emily's face turned pale. So it's true. Linda nodded. Yes. For several minutes, nobody spoke. The father Emily had searched for all her life was Robert's brother. The same brother who had disappeared decades earlier. The same brother Robert refused to discuss. The same brother whose actions had shaped all of our lives. My phone suddenly vibrated. Unknown number. I opened the message. My blood ran cold. Daniel knows Robert is dead. Another message appeared immediately. Be careful who you trust. Emily looked at me. What is it? I showed her. Linda's face lost color. No. What? He can't know. I stared at her. You've heard from him. She looked away. Mom, Emily asked. Linda began shaking. He contacted me 2 weeks ago. My heart stopped. What? He called? When? Before Robert died. The room exploded with questions. What did he want? Why didn't you tell anyone? Did Robert know? Linda covered her face. He wanted money. My breathing became shallow. From who? From Robert. Emily stood. My father? Linda nodded. The real one. She looked toward me. He said if Robert didn't pay him, he would come back. I felt a terrible sensation settling in my chest. Because suddenly, Robert's fear before his death made sense. The secret messages, the anxiety, the hidden files, the worry. Daniel Collins was no longer a ghost from the past. He was alive, and somewhere he had learned that Robert Collins was dead. Before anyone could speak again, my phone vibrated once more. Unknown number. This message was shorter than the others. Only 4 words. Daniel is coming back. I did not sleep that night. Linda insisted that I stay in her guest room because a thunderstorm had made the roads dangerous, but the truth was that none of us wanted to be alone. Emily sat in the kitchen until nearly midnight. Linda cried quietly in the living room. And I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Robert. For nearly 4 decades, I had believed my husband carried only ordinary burdens: mortgages, retirement accounts, family arguments, aging parents. Instead, he had spent almost 30 years protecting his brother's secret. And now that brother was coming back. Around 6 in the morning, I walked into the kitchen. Emily sat at the table holding a cup of coffee. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she asked, "What was Robert like when he was young?" I smiled sadly. "He was responsible." She nodded. "That sounds right. He worried about everyone. He worried about me." I looked at her. "He never missed your birthday." "Never." I suddenly remembered something. Years earlier, I had once complained that Robert always scheduled business trips in October. He smiled and said, "Some promises can't be broken." At the time, I thought he meant work. Now I realized he had meant Emily. Emily stared into her coffee. "I keep trying to hate him." "Robert?" She nodded. "For lying." I understood. "I've tried too." And I looked toward the window. "I don't think he lied because he stopped loving us." She quietly said, "He loved you." The certainty in her voice surprised me. "He talked about you all the time." My eyes filled with tears. "He did. He called you his anchor." I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly like Robert. Whenever life became difficult, he would sit beside me on the porch and say, "You keep me steady, Maggie." No one else called me Maggie, only him. Around 8 o'clock, Linda joined us. She looked exhausted. "I think Robert knew Daniel would return." I looked up. "What makes you say that?" She walked into her bedroom and returned carrying a small notebook. "He left this here last fall." My heart stopped. Robert's handwriting covered the pages. He had written dates, phone numbers, names, bank information, and one sentence circled twice. "If Daniel returns, Margaret must know everything." My throat tightened. He was preparing. Linda nodded. "He became worried." "When?" "About a year ago." She explained that Daniel had begun contacting her again. At first, the calls were infrequent. Then they became demands. Money, information, questions about Emily, questions about Robert. He blamed Robert for stealing his life. I frowned. "Stealing it?" Linda nodded. "He said Robert took his daughter." Emily looked shocked. "He abandoned me." Linda nodded sadly. "Yes." But people who abandon others often rewrite their own history. I thought about Robert. Had he been frightened all this time? Had he known his brother would eventually return? My phone rang. Susan. I suddenly realized I had not called her the night before. Mom! Her voice sounded worried. Where are you? I'm still in Kentucky. Are you okay? I hesitated. No. There was silence. Then she quietly said, I knew this would happen. My heart tightened. What do you mean? Another pause. Dad was scared. When? The last few months. I stood up. Why didn't you tell me? He asked me not to. The same answer again. Always Robert, always promises. What exactly did he tell you? Susan sighed. He said someone from the past was coming back. I felt cold. Did he say who? No. He never mentioned Daniel. No. She lowered her voice. But he met with a lawyer. My heart skipped. When? About 2 months ago. Why didn't you tell me? He made me promise. I sat down slowly. A lawyer, secret bank accounts, hidden notes, scheduled plans. Robert had been preparing for something, and somehow he had expected not to be there when the truth came out. After the call ended, Linda spoke quietly. There is one more thing. I almost laughed. It felt as if every hour revealed another secret. She opened a desk drawer. Inside was a faded photograph. 2 young men stood beside an old pickup truck. I immediately recognized Robert. Beside him stood Daniel. The resemblance shocked me. Same eyes, same dark hair. But Daniel's smile carried something dangerous, something reckless. Emily stared at the picture. That's him. Linda nodded. Your father. Emily looked at the face for several seconds. No tears, no anger, only emptiness. I don't know him. Linda reached for her hand. He doesn't deserve you. Emily didn't answer. I picked up the photograph. On the back, Robert had written Summer, 1989. Before everything changed. Before everything changed. I wondered what exactly had happened between the brothers, because people don't erase family members without reason. At noon, I decided to return home. Linda hugged me at the door. I never wanted to hurt you. I believed her. Surprisingly, I truly did. Emily walked me to my car. The sky had finally cleared. For the first time in days, sunlight appeared. She stood quietly beside the driver's door. I know this is strange. I nodded. Very. She smiled sadly. I spent years wishing Robert was my father. My eyes filled with tears. He acted like one. He was. She looked toward the house. Just not by blood. I reached out and squeezed her hand. The gesture surprised both of us, because 24 hours earlier, she had been a stranger, a possible secret daughter, a threat to my marriage. Now she felt more like another victim of the same secret. Before I got into the car, she said something softly. He loved you most. I looked at her. How do you know? Because every time he left, he couldn't wait to go home. The drive back to Ohio felt different. Not easier, but clearer. Robert had not betrayed me with another woman. He had carried another family's pain. Yet questions still remained. Who was sending the messages? Why had Robert expected trouble? And where was Daniel now? When I arrived home that evening, Susan was waiting in my driveway. She ran toward me. "Mom!" I hugged her. For the first time since the funeral, I allowed myself to cry. Not because of betrayal, because of exhaustion. We sat together in the kitchen. I told her everything. Linda, Emily, Daniel, the DNA results. Susan listened quietly. When I finished, she stared at the table. I knew Dad was protecting someone. "Why didn't you ask questions?" She smiled sadly. "Because he looked ashamed." That sounded exactly like Robert, the man who took responsibility for everything, even things he never caused. As we talked, I noticed something unusual. Susan kept looking toward the hallway. "Nervous?" I asked. She hesitated. "There was a man here yesterday." My blood ran cold. "What?" He knocked on the door. After the funeral, I felt my heart begin to race. What did he want? He asked for Dad. Every muscle in my body tightened. What did he look like? She swallowed. Older, maybe 60. And he said he was family. I stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked frightened. "Because before he left, he said something." "What?" Her voice became barely audible. "He said Robert owed him." At that exact moment, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. My hands shook as I opened the message. There were only 6 words. "He's already been to your house." I did not show Susan the text message. Not immediately. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone while the words repeated themselves in my head. "He's already been to your house." The stranger who had been sending messages seemed to know everything. My husband's secrets, Linda's address, Emily's beliefs, Daniel's return, even the fact that a man had visited my house. Susan watched me carefully. "Mom," I looked up. "The man who came here, tell me everything." She nodded. "It was the afternoon after Dad died." "What time?" "Maybe 4. I remembered exactly where I had been. The funeral home, choosing caskets, signing paperwork, trying not to fall apart. "What did he look like?" She thought for a moment. "Older than Dad." "How much older?" "Maybe 65, 67. "Gray hair." She nodded. "Tall." "Did he give his name?" "No." "Did he ask for Robert?" "Yes." "And when you told him Dad died?" She looked uncomfortable. He seemed shocked. That surprised me. If Daniel had already known about Robert's death, why come to the house pretending otherwise? "What did he say?" Susan swallowed. "He said Robert owed him something." My heart tightened. "Money." He didn't explain. "And then—" He looked at me for a long time. Her voice became quieter. "He asked if you were home." I felt cold. "What did you tell him?" "That you were at the funeral home." She looked guilty. "I'm sorry." "You didn't do anything wrong." But inside, I wasn't sure. The man had come looking for me. Not Robert. Me. That evening, Susan stayed for dinner. Neither of us had much appetite. The house felt different now. No longer simply empty. Now it felt watched. Every sound made me jump. Every passing car caught my attention. Around 7 o'clock, Susan suddenly spoke. There was something else. I looked up. The man asked whether Dad still had the safety deposit box. The fork slipped from my hand. "What?" He asked if Dad had closed it. My heart started pounding. The silver key, the message, the safety deposit box. The stranger knew. And now, Daniel apparently knew too. Why didn't you tell me before? I didn't think it mattered. I stood up. I need to go to the bank tomorrow. Susan immediately shook her head. Not alone. I'll be fine. Mom, if this man is really Uncle Daniel, I don't even know if it's him. She looked at me. Neither did Dad. The sentence surprised me. What do you mean? Susan hesitated. There was a conversation. When? About 2 months ago. Why didn't you tell me? Her eyes filled with guilt. Because Dad asked me not to. Again, always Robert, always promises. What conversation? She looked toward the living room. He thought he saw someone outside the house. My breathing slowed. When, one night after dinner, I tried to remember. Robert had become unusually quiet during the spring. Several times I found him standing at the front window, watching, listening. When I asked him what was wrong, he simply said he was tired. He said the man looked familiar. Did he say Daniel? She shook her head. No. But he seemed frightened. Robert. Frightened. The word didn't fit. My husband worried about finances, about aging, about health, but he rarely feared people. Unless this wasn't simply family conflict. Unless something worse had happened years ago. After Susan went to bed in the guest room, I entered Robert's office. The old phone still sat inside the drawer. I turned it on again. This time, I searched for one name. Daniel. Nothing. No contacts. No messages. No photographs. Almost as if Robert had deliberately erased his brother from his life. But as I continued searching, I found something hidden inside the notes application. Only one sentence. If Daniel returns, don't meet him alone. The note had been created 6 months earlier. My hands trembled. Robert had known, not feared, known. My phone suddenly rang. Unknown number, not a text, a call. For several seconds, I simply stared. Then I answered. Hello. Silence. I heard breathing, slow breathing. Who is this? Still nothing. Then a man's voice, older, rough. Margaret! Every muscle in my body froze. Who is this? Another pause. My name is Daniel. The room began spinning. I sat down. Robert's brother, the ghost, the missing man, after nearly 30 years. How did you get this number? It isn't difficult. My voice became cold. Why are you calling? He sighed. I heard Robert died. He did. Several seconds passed. I didn't think it would happen this way. My anger returned. You came to my house. Yes. Why? I needed to speak with Robert. You're too late. His voice sounded tired, older than I imagined. I'm sorry. I didn't know whether he meant Robert's death or something else. What do you want? Another silence. Finally, my brother took something that belongs to me. The sentence chilled me. What? My daughter. I closed my eyes. Emily isn't yours. She is. You abandoned her. I was young. You disappeared. He became quiet. Robert never told you the whole story? Of course. Another secret. Another hidden truth. What story? You should ask why my brother paid Linda all those years. He felt responsible. Daniel laughed softly. No. The sound disturbed me. Then why? Because he made a promise. The same word again. Promises. Always promises. To whom? He answered immediately. To our mother. I frowned. What? Our mother knew everything. The room suddenly felt cold. Robert's mother. The woman Linda met at the nursing home. The woman who died 13 years ago. What did she know? Everything. My breathing became shallow. Why are you telling me this? Because Robert is dead. And dead, men can't explain themselves. His voice changed. Sadder, more tired. Margaret, my brother wasn't the man you think. My anger rose. He was a better man than you. Daniel became silent. After several seconds, he quietly said, Maybe. That answer surprised me. No anger, no defense, only regret. What do you want now? He inhaled slowly. The safety deposit box. I felt my blood run cold. The key. The silver key. Why? Because Robert left something there. What? Another pause. The truth. I gripped the phone tighter. What truth? His voice became almost a whisper. The reason my brother spent 30 years trying to save a family he helped destroy. My heart stopped. Helped destroy. Not Daniel. Robert. No. Ask yourself something, Margaret. What? Why would a man sacrifice 30 years of his life for a mistake that wasn't his? I couldn't speak, because the question terrified me. Daniel continued. Robert carried that guilt until the day he died. My voice shook. What guilt? He answered softly. The accident. The line went silent. Daniel, nothing. Daniel, he had disconnected. I sat alone in Robert's office for nearly an hour. The accident, Robert's guilt, their mother, promises, the safety deposit box. Nothing made sense anymore. I looked toward Robert's desk, toward his empty chair, toward the photograph of our wedding. And for the first time since his funeral, a terrible thought entered my mind. What if Robert hadn't simply been protecting his brother? What if he had been protecting himself? My phone vibrated. Unknown number. One final message appeared. The box must be opened before the reading of the will. I barely slept after Daniel's phone call. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice. My brother took something that belongs to me. The accident. Our mother knew everything. And worst of all, Robert helped destroy a family. Those words felt impossible. The man I had married was honest, reliable, kind. Yet every new secret seemed to push him farther away from the man I thought I knew. At 8 o'clock the following morning, Susan drove me to First National Bank. The silver key sat inside my purse. Neither of us spoke much during the drive. The city looked ordinary. People carried coffee. Children waited for school buses. Cars filled the roads. Meanwhile, my entire life felt as if it had become someone else's story. The bank manager, Mr. Ellis, greeted us politely. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mrs. Collins. I nodded. My husband had a safety deposit box. He checked the records. Yes, box 314. My heart began pounding. Only you and Mr. Collins had access. That surprised me. Daniel had wanted the key, but he had never possessed access. Mr. Ellis escorted us into the vault. The room felt cold. Metal doors lined the walls. He removed the box and placed it in a private room. I'll give you some privacy. The door closed. Susan looked at me. You okay? No. My hands shook as I inserted the silver key. The lock clicked. Inside sat several items: a thick envelope, a cassette tape, a small jewelry box, and a legal document. My eyes immediately found my name. For Margaret. Please read first. Tears blurred my vision. Susan squeezed my hand. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, Robert's handwriting. My dear Maggie, if you are reading this, then I am gone or unable to explain things myself. I know I should have told you years ago. I wanted to, many times, but every year that passed made the truth more difficult. Please know one thing before you read further. I loved you every day of our marriage. I stopped reading. The tears came immediately because I could hear his voice, his exact voice. Susan quietly cried beside me. I continued. Daniel made terrible choices when he was young. One of those choices changed several lives forever. I tried to fix what he broke, but in doing so, I created my own lies. I never betrayed you, but I did keep secrets. I pray you can forgive me. Love always, Robert. I placed the letter down. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The legal document underneath contained instructions for Robert's attorney, and one sentence immediately caught my attention. A portion of my estate shall be placed in trust for Emily Walker. Susan's face changed. What? I looked at her. Did you know this? No. Her voice sounded strained. How much? I continued reading, nearly 1/3 of Robert's personal savings. My daughter suddenly stood. This can't be right. Susan, no. Her breathing became heavy. Dad is giving money to a stranger. She's not a stranger. She looked at me. To us, she is. I stared at her. The anger in her voice surprised me. He spent years helping her. He helped a lot of people. Not like this. I realized something. Susan had known about the secrets, but she had never imagined how deeply Robert had become involved. She sat down. Mom, this changes everything. No. She looked up. It changes money. Her eyes filled with tears. He never told me. Because he knew you wouldn't understand. The words came out before I could stop them. She stared at me. I wouldn't understand. He was trying to help someone. He was helping them more than us. The room became quiet. For the first time since Robert's death, I saw resentment in my daughter. Not grief, resentment. I opened the jewelry box. Inside rested a simple gold necklace. Alongside it was another note. Give this to Emily. It belonged to my mother. Susan looked shocked. Grandma's necklace, I nodded. My mother-in-law had worn it constantly. After her death, Robert kept it. Or so I thought. Apparently, he had planned to give it away. Susan stood again. No. What? He can't do this. Susan. He can't give Grandma's necklace to her. I looked at my daughter carefully. For the first time, I wondered how long she had been struggling with this. Perhaps Robert had discussed Emily with her. Perhaps he had prepared her. Perhaps she had spent years fearing this exact moment. Mr. Ellis knocked gently. "Everything all right?" "Yes." He left again. I picked up the cassette tape. Robert's handwriting covered the label. Only after the will. The will. Tomorrow morning. Our attorney had scheduled the reading. Suddenly, I understood the text message. The box must be opened before the reading of the will. Someone wanted me prepared. Prepared for Susan. Prepared for Emily. Prepared for conflict. When we returned home, tension filled the car. Susan remained silent. Finally, she spoke. "Are you really giving her the money?" "It's Robert's decision." "What about me?" "You'll still inherit." "Not the same amount." I looked at her. "Is that what this is about?" Her face reddened. "No." But it was. At least partly. That realization hurt. My daughter had lost her father. Yet money had already entered the room. After arriving home, Susan left quickly. Before getting into her car, she turned toward me. "I just don't trust them. Emily didn't ask for any of this." "You don't know her." Neither did Robert. Not really. Or perhaps he knew her better than any of us. That evening, I called Linda. She answered immediately. "Margaret." I opened the box. Silence. "Did you find it?" "The necklace." Linda began crying. "He promised his mother." "What promise?" "That Emily would always be family." I sat quietly. Then I told her about the trust, about Susan, about the argument. Linda sounded devastated. "We don't want his money." "Emily is in the will." "I know. But we don't want to hurt your family." I almost laughed. Our family had already been hurt, 30 years earlier, long before any of us understood it. After the call ended, I sat alone in the living room. Robert's chair remained empty. His reading glasses still rested beside the lamp. And suddenly, I remembered something. 2 weeks before his death, he had sat exactly there, watching television, completely quiet. I asked him what was wrong. He smiled sadly and said, "If something happened to me, would you trust me?" At the time, I thought he meant his health, his heart, his age. Now I understood. He had already been carrying this burden. Perhaps he knew Daniel was returning. Perhaps he knew the truth could no longer stay hidden. Around 10 o'clock, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I opened the message. For the first time, it wasn't a warning. It was a question. Does Susan know what Robert paid her to keep secret? My blood ran cold, because suddenly every conversation with my daughter felt different. Every hesitation, every silence, every promise she had kept for her father. And for the first time, I wondered whether Susan knew much more than she had ever admitted. I read the message at least 10 times. Does Susan know what Robert paid her to keep secret? My hands trembled. For days, the unknown sender had guided me toward answers. Every message had been accurate. Every warning had proven true. And now the messages were pointing toward my daughter. I wanted to reject the idea immediately. Susan was my child. I had raised her. She had stayed beside me through the funeral. She had cried with me. She had held my hand. But she had also hidden things. She knew about Emily. She knew Robert was frightened. She knew someone from the past had returned. And now I wondered how much more she had never told me. That night, I barely slept. At 6 in the morning, I heard movement downstairs. Susan was making coffee. For a few moments, I stood in the hallway watching her. She looked tired, older. Grief had settled into her face. Suddenly, I felt guilty. She had lost her father, and here I was, questioning her. Yet the message would not leave my mind. I sat down at the table. "You woke up early." She forced a smile. "So did you." Neither of us touched the coffee. Finally, I asked, "Did Dad ever give you money?" Her face changed immediately. Only slightly, but enough. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." She looked down. "When?" "Over the last few years." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "A little." "How much?" She hesitated. "Sometimes he helped." "For what? Bills?" That wasn't unusual. Parents help children. Robert had always helped Susan, but something felt different. "Did he ask you to keep secrets?" She looked directly at me. "Mom, please answer me." Several seconds passed. Finally, she nodded. My stomach tightened. "What secrets?" She began crying. Not loudly, quietly, the way frightened people cry. "He asked me not to tell you about Emily." "I know that. He asked me not to tell you Daniel called." "When?" "Last year." I froze. "What?" She looked ashamed. "He called Dad." "How many times?" "I don't know." "How many, Susan?" "Several." I sat back. Robert had been dealing with Daniel long before his death, and Susan had known. What did Daniel want? Money. "Did Dad give him any?" She shook her head. "No." I wasn't sure whether I believed her. "Did Dad pay you to keep quiet?" Her eyes widened. "No." "Then why are you hiding things?" She looked exhausted. "Because he was terrified." Those words surprised me. "Terrified of what?" She wiped her eyes. "He said if you learned everything at once, it would destroy you." I looked toward Robert's empty chair. Maybe he was right. Around 9 o'clock, we drove to Attorney Michael Harris's office for the reading of the will. The waiting room felt cold. Emily and Linda had arrived earlier. For the first time, Susan and Emily stood in the same room. Neither woman knew what to say. Both had lost Robert. Both believed they had known him. Both had discovered they only knew part of him. Emily quietly approached me. "How are you?" I almost laughed. "I don't know." She nodded. "Me neither." Susan watched us from across the room. Her expression was impossible to read. The attorney finally invited us inside. Robert's file rested on his desk. He looked uncomfortable. "I understand this is a difficult situation." Nobody answered. He began reading. The house belonged to me. Retirement accounts would be divided between Susan and me. Several charitable donations had been arranged. Then he reached the final section. Mr. Collins established a trust fund for Emily Walker. The room became silent. Susan looked down. Linda immediately spoke. "We don't want it." The attorney shook his head. "Mr. Collins was very clear." Emily sat perfectly still. She seemed almost embarrassed. Then Mr. Harris said something unexpected. "There is also a recorded message." My heart stopped. "What?" "He instructed me to play it only if all parties were present." The room grew quiet. The attorney placed a small digital recorder on the desk. He pressed play. Robert's voice filled the room. For several seconds, nobody breathed, because it truly felt as though the dead had returned. "Hello?" His voice sounded tired, older. If you're hearing this, then I wasn't able to explain things myself. I began crying immediately. Susan covered her mouth. Emily lowered her eyes. Robert continued. I know some of you are angry. A pause. You have every right to be. His breathing sounded uneven. I made mistakes. Another pause. But I never stopped loving my family. Then he said something that stunned everyone. Susan, thank you for keeping my confidence. Susan burst into tears. Robert continued. Emily, none of this was your fault. Emily began crying. Linda, thank you for trusting me. The room became silent. Then, and Maggie. My entire body shook. I am sorry. I closed my eyes. You deserved the truth years ago. His voice cracked. I thought I had more time. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Robert said something none of us expected. Someone may tell you I caused the accident. The room became still. Accident. The same word Daniel used. Robert continued. I didn't. My breathing stopped. But I was there. The recording ended. Silence. Complete silence. The attorney looked confused. What accident? No one answered, because none of us knew, or perhaps one person did. Susan. She sat staring at the recorder. Her face had gone pale. I looked at her. Susan? She didn't answer. Susan? Slowly she raised her eyes. There were tears everywhere. And guilt. Real guilt. Mom, what is it? She began shaking. I think Dad told me. The room froze. Emily looked at her. Linda stopped breathing. What did he tell you? Susan cried harder. Not everything. What, Susan? She looked directly at me. He said Uncle Daniel blames him because of a car accident. My heart pounded. When? 30 years ago. The attorney quietly left the room. This was no longer legal business. This was family. Susan wiped her eyes. Dad said Daniel was drunk. The room became silent. He said somebody got hurt. My voice barely worked. Who? She shook her head. He never told me. Emily leaned forward. Was it my mother? Linda looked terrified. No. Was it me? No. Nobody understood. Then Susan whispered, he said Grandma made him promise never to tell anyone. My mind immediately returned to Daniel. The phone calls, the fear, the money, the threats, the guilt. Perhaps Robert had not been protecting Daniel. Perhaps he had been protecting their mother. As we left the attorney's office, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. My hands shook. The message contained only one sentence. The recordings on Robert's old phone were scheduled by him. My heart stopped. Another message arrived. He knew he might die before telling you. I suddenly remembered something. Robert's old phone. The hidden notes. The messages. The timing. Could Robert have arranged all of this? Could he have been the person leading me? One final message appeared. Check the voicemail folder. I stared at the screen, because for the first time since the funeral, I no longer believed a stranger was guiding me. I believed my husband was. I drove home alone after the meeting with the attorney. Susan had gone directly back to her apartment. Emily and Linda returned to Kentucky. For the first time since Robert's funeral, I found myself completely alone. The house felt different, not emptier, not quieter. It felt as if Robert had left pieces of himself everywhere, waiting for me to discover them. The message still sat on my phone. Check the voicemail folder. Robert's old phone remained inside his desk drawer. I carried it into the living room and sat in his chair. For several minutes, I simply stared at the screen. Then I opened the voicemail application. Most of the messages were old. Doctors, pharmacies, church members. But hidden inside the archive folder were 3 saved recordings, all from Robert himself. The first one had been recorded 8 months earlier. My hands trembled as I pressed play. "Maggie, if you're hearing this, then things happened faster than I expected." His voice sounded tired. "I don't know whether Daniel came back yet." I stopped breathing. "He blames me for what happened." A pause. "And perhaps he always will." The recording ended. I immediately played the second message. "I should have told you years ago." Another pause. "I was 27. Daniel was 22. My heart pounded. "Our mother asked me to protect him." I closed my eyes. Robert continued. "That decision changed everything." The message ended abruptly. I reached for the third recording. For several seconds, I couldn't press play, because suddenly I understood something. Robert had known, not simply about Daniel, not simply about Emily. He had expected this. Perhaps he had even expected to die. I finally pressed the button. His voice filled the room. "The accident happened in 1990. My entire body became still. Daniel had been drinking. A long silence. He wanted to drive. I could barely breathe. I should have stopped him. Another pause. I didn't. Tears filled my eyes. We hit another car. The room seemed to spin. We left. I stopped the recording. My hands shook violently. Left. They left. I stared at Robert's photograph above the fireplace. The man I loved, the man who fixed bicycles for neighborhood children, the man who cried when our dog died, the man who spent 30 years helping strangers. And now, I had learned he had once left an accident scene. I couldn't continue. Not yet. I walked outside. The October air felt cold. The trees along Maple Street had begun changing colors. Robert loved autumn. He always said the trees taught people how to let go gracefully. I sat on the porch where we had spent countless evenings together. For the first time since his funeral, I felt angry, truly angry. Not because of Linda, not because of Emily, because of Robert. Because he had carried all of this alone. Because he had decided what I could handle. Because he had trusted everyone except me. My phone rang. Susan. "Mom." I listened to the recordings. Silence. "You know?" Her voice trembled. "Some of it." "How much?" "Dad told me there was an accident." I closed my eyes. "He said Uncle Daniel was drunk." "What else?" "He said he spent years trying to make things right." I asked the question that had haunted me all day. "Did someone die?" Susan became quiet. "I don't know." After the call ended, I returned inside. This time, I finished the recording. Robert's voice sounded weaker. "The woman in the other car survived." I froze. Woman. Not dead, but injured. "The accident destroyed her life." My throat tightened. Daniel disappeared after the accident. Their mother convinced Robert not to report his brother. She feared losing another son. Robert agreed, and for years he carried the guilt. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The woman was Linda. I stopped breathing. Linda. Not a random nurse, not a stranger. Linda. The entire room seemed to disappear. Robert continued. Emily was only a few months old. I felt cold. Daniel had driven drunk. Linda had been injured, and Robert had helped hide the truth. Suddenly, everything made sense. The guilt, the money, the promises, the years. Robert had not simply been protecting his brother. He had been protecting himself because he had stayed silent. His voice became softer. I spent 30 years trying to repay a debt that could never be repaid. Tears rolled down my face. I helped raise Emily because Daniel abandoned her. Another pause. I helped Linda because I failed her. His breathing became uneven. I wanted to tell you 100 times. The final words nearly broke me. You deserved a better husband than the man I was. The recording ended. Silence filled the house. I cried for nearly an hour because for the first time I understood Robert completely. He wasn't a liar. He wasn't a cheater. He wasn't living a second life. He was a guilty man trying to spend 30 years repairing a single terrible night. Around 6 o'clock, someone knocked on the front door. My heart nearly stopped. I looked through the window. Daniel. He stood alone, older, gray-haired, tired, nothing like the dangerous man I had imagined. He looked broken. I almost refused to answer. Instead, I opened the door. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. He looked remarkably like Robert. Same eyes, same face, only harder, more damaged. I'm sorry for your loss. I said nothing. He looked toward the house. May I come in? No. He nodded. I understand. The evening wind moved through the trees. Finally, I asked, Why are you here? He looked down. Robert is gone. Yes. And now there's nobody left who remembers the truth. I crossed my arms. I know about the accident. His eyes closed. Then you know I destroyed everything. No. He looked surprised. You both did. He nodded slowly. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his coat and removed a photograph. Old, faded, the two brothers, and a young woman. Linda, standing beside a damaged car. My blood ran cold. The photograph had been taken after the accident. Daniel handed it to me. I've carried this for 30 years. I stared at it. Robert looked devastated. Daniel looked terrified. Linda stood beside them with a bandage on her forehead. Nobody smiled. Nobody moved. This was the day after. My voice barely worked. Why keep it? He looked toward the darkening sky. Because Robert made me. I frowned. What? He said one day we'd have to remember what we did. I looked at him. For the first time, I saw not a villain, not a monster, but a man who had spent 30 years running from his own mistakes. Before leaving, Daniel said something quietly. Your husband saved my daughter. I looked at him. Emily isn't your daughter. His eyes filled with tears. I know. He turned toward his car. Then he stopped. There is one more thing Robert never told you. My heart tightened. What? He looked directly at me. The person sending those messages wasn't Robert. The cold returned immediately. What are you talking about? Daniel swallowed. I know who it is. Every nerve in my body became alert. Who? He looked toward the house, toward Robert's empty chair through the window. And then he said, It's your mother-in-law. I stared at Daniel long after he spoke. It's your mother-in-law. The words made no sense. Robert's mother, Eleanor Collins, had been dead for 13 years. I held the old photograph tightly. That's impossible. Daniel looked exhausted. No, not literally. Then what do you mean? He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. She knew this day would come. I said nothing. Before she died, she wrote letters. My heartbeat slowed. Letters? He nodded. She wanted Robert to tell you everything. He didn't. No. The evening wind moved through the trees. Daniel looked older than ever. Regret seemed to live inside him. My mother knew Robert was carrying too much. Then why make him keep the secret? Daniel laughed bitterly. Because she was trying to save me. The answer made me angry. She destroyed him. He lowered his eyes. I know. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his coat and handed me a folded piece of paper. What is this? Her handwriting. I opened it. The paper had yellowed with age. The writing was unmistakably Eleanor's. Robert, one day Margaret must know. You cannot carry this forever. My throat tightened. She had wanted him to tell me. He simply never found the courage. Daniel looked toward the street. I didn't come here for money. Then why? He hesitated. To see my brother. The answer felt genuine. You're too late. His eyes filled with tears. I know. After he left, I remained on the porch for nearly an hour. For the first time, I didn't see Daniel as a threat. I saw him as another broken person standing in the shadow of Robert Collins. Robert had spent 30 years repairing damage. Daniel had spent 30 years running from it. And I had spent 38 years living beside a man who carried both burdens. The next morning, Susan arrived unexpectedly. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. We sat in the kitchen. Coffee cooled between us. Finally, I told her about Daniel. She became pale. He came here. Yes. Were you alone? Yes. Mom, that's dangerous. He wasn't dangerous. She shook her head. You don't know him. I looked at her carefully. Neither do you. Her eyes lowered. After several moments, she said something quietly. Dad was afraid of me. The statement surprised me. What? She began crying. He thought I would hate him. I reached for her hand. Why? Because of Emily. I waited. Susan wiped her tears. 3 years ago, Dad told me about her. I already knew that, but now she continued. He wanted to change his will. My chest tightened. And I got angry. The room became silent. What did you say? She looked ashamed. I asked why he cared more about a stranger than his own daughter. I remembered the argument in the attorney's office, the inheritance, the money. Perhaps this conflict had existed for years. He cried. I had seen Robert cry only a handful of times. The thought hurt. He said Emily had nobody. Susan looked down. And I told him she wasn't our responsibility. The guilt in her voice was overwhelming. He never argued. He just looked disappointed. I squeezed her hand. You were scared. I was selfish. No. She shook her head. I thought she was taking him away. The truth settled between us. Susan had not hidden things because she was greedy. She had hidden them because she feared losing her father. Perhaps she had been losing him for years. Around noon, my phone rang. Emily. Her voice sounded frightened. Margaret? What happened? My mom collapsed. I stood immediately. What? The doctor says it's stress. I'll come. Susan looked surprised. You're going to Kentucky? Yes. I'll go with you. The drive felt different this time. The distance between Ohio and Kentucky no longer felt like traveling toward strangers. Instead, it felt like driving toward unfinished family business. When we arrived at the hospital, Emily sat alone in the waiting room. She looked exhausted. The moment she saw me, she stood. She's okay. I hugged her, without thinking, without hesitation. She immediately began crying. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Susan watched quietly. Eventually, she approached. Emily looked nervous. Susan looked equally uncomfortable. The two women had never really spoken. Finally, Susan said, I'm sorry. Emily blinked. For what? For judging you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted his money. I know. I just wanted him. Susan began crying. So did I. For the first time since Robert died, I watched both young women grieve together. Not rivals, not enemies. Two daughters, one by blood, one by choice. The doctor later informed us that Linda would recover. Stress, exhaustion, too much grief. As evening approached, Emily and I sat in the hospital cafeteria. She stirred her coffee. I saw Daniel. I looked up. When? 2 weeks ago. My heart tightened. What happened? He came to the house. What did he want? He asked if Robert was still helping us. And he seemed angry. I remembered Robert's fear, the secret recordings, the warnings. Did he threaten you? She nodded slowly. He said Robert stole everything from him. What did you say? I told him he abandoned everything himself. She smiled sadly. He cried. That surprised me. Emily looked toward the window. I don't think he's evil. No, just broken. I thought about Robert, Daniel, Linda, myself. Perhaps everyone in this story was broken in some way. Around 8 o'clock, Susan came into the cafeteria holding my phone. Mom, what is it? She looked frightened. There was another message. My heart sank. Unknown number. I opened it. For the first time in days, the message was longer. Robert knew his heart was failing. He scheduled the messages before his death. The final truth is inside the cassette tape. Listen to it before Daniel disappears again. The cassette tape. The one from the safety deposit box. Only after the will. I had almost forgotten. My hands trembled. Robert had left one final recording, perhaps his last confession, perhaps his final goodbye. Susan looked at me. What is it? I swallowed. The tape. The one from the bank. I nodded. Emily looked confused. What tape? I realized something. Robert had left his final words. Not only for me, for all of us. Later that night, we returned to my house. Linda remained in the hospital. Daniel had disappeared. The three of us sat in Robert's living room. His empty chair stood beside the lamp. The cassette player sat on the table. Outside rain began falling once more. I inserted the tape. For several seconds, only static filled the room. Then Robert's voice returned, older, weak, and the very first sentence he spoke made all three of us freeze. If you're listening to this, then I have already died sooner than I expected. If you're listening to this, then I have already died sooner than I expected. Robert's voice filled the living room. Rain tapped against the windows. The three of us sat completely still. Susan held her breath. Emily stared at the floor. And I sat in my husband's chair, hearing the voice I thought I would never hear again. Robert continued. My doctor warned me that my heart was getting worse. I didn't tell anyone because I believed I still had time. I closed my eyes. Even that had been another secret. I know some of you are sitting together now. A small pause. Maggie, Susan, Emily. All three of us looked at one another. He had imagined this exact moment. I hope you are listening together. His breathing sounded weaker than before. Because none of you are enemies. Tears rolled down Susan's face. Emily wiped her eyes. Robert continued. The greatest mistake of my life was not the accident. I stopped breathing. It was believing I could carry the consequences alone. The tape crackled softly. My mother was dying. Daniel was drinking. Linda was injured. Emily was a baby. A pause. And I believed I could fix everything. I remembered all the years Robert had spent solving other people's problems, fixing broken fences, paying bills, helping neighbors. He had always believed he could repair things, even broken lives. I was wrong. The room became silent. Then Robert said the words that finally changed everything. Daniel did not kill anyone. Emily looked up. Susan turned toward me. Robert continued. Linda survived. Emily survived. But fear destroyed our family. Another pause. I let Daniel disappear. I let my mother protect him. And I tried to become the man who repaired the damage. His breathing became uneven. I should have told Margaret the truth 20 years ago. 20 years, not 30. That surprised me. Perhaps he had planned to tell me many times. Perhaps fear had stopped him. I loved my wife every day of my life. My tears returned immediately. I never betrayed her. I never stopped choosing her. I covered my face, because after all these days, after all these secrets, those were the words I had needed most. Robert continued. Susan? My daughter looked up. You don't need to protect me anymore. She began crying. You don't have to choose between your family and your father. Then, Emily. She closed her eyes. You were never a burden. Her shoulders shook. I loved you because you deserved to be loved. A long silence, finally, Maggie. My heart nearly broke. If Daniel comes back, please listen to him before judging him. I looked toward the rain outside. Even now, Robert was asking me to forgive. The recording continued. I arranged the messages. All three of us froze. The old phone was programmed months ago. I looked at Susan. She looked back at me. Robert had been the unknown sender, or at least the messages had been. I knew my heart was failing. Another pause. I was afraid I would die before telling the truth. My breathing became shallow. I wanted the truth to arrive slowly. That sentence explained everything. The folder, the phone, the instructions, the safety deposit box, the messages. Robert had guided us after his death. He had become the stranger leading me toward the truth. The final words came quietly. I hope one day you forgive me. The tape ended. The room became silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Only the rain remained. Susan cried openly. Emily covered her face. I sat staring at the empty chair beside me. For several minutes, it felt as though Robert had been sitting there with us. Then the doorbell rang. All three of us jumped. I stood. The clock showed almost 9 o'clock. Who would come now? I opened the door. Daniel. Rain covered his coat. He looked exhausted. I need to talk. I almost refused. Instead, I stepped aside. He entered slowly. For several seconds, he simply stared at Robert's chair. My brother always sat there. No one answered. Then he noticed Emily, his daughter. Perhaps for the first time in years. She stood. He looked at her. She looked at him. Two strangers connected by blood. Neither knew what to say. Finally, Daniel spoke. I'm sorry. Emily remained silent. He nodded. I deserve that. He turned toward me. I heard the tape. You knew about it. Robert gave it to me 6 months ago. I frowned. What? He said if he died, I had to come back. The room became silent, even after everything Robert had trusted his brother. Daniel sat down. For the first time, he looked truly old. My brother saved my life. Susan looked at him. Then why blame him? Daniel stared at the floor. Because it was easier. He laughed bitterly. I spent 30 years blaming Robert because I couldn't forgive myself. His eyes filled with tears. I was drunk. He looked toward Emily. I left your mother. He looked toward me. I left my family. Then he said something none of us expected. The money Robert gave Linda wasn't because of guilt. I frowned. What? He made me repay it. The room became still. Every dollar. My heart stopped. Daniel continued. I worked construction jobs. Factories. Anything. He took the money and gave it to Linda. I stared at him. Robert had forced his brother to take responsibility. Quietly. For years. He said if I wanted forgiveness, I had to earn it. Emily looked shocked. You helped us. Daniel shook his head. No. His voice broke. Your uncle did. He stood. I came back because Robert was dying. I looked at him. You knew. He nodded. He called me. When? 3 months ago. My throat tightened. What did he say? Daniel smiled sadly. He told me to stop hiding. The room became quiet. After several minutes, Emily finally spoke. I don't know you. Daniel nodded. I know. I don't know if I ever will. Tears appeared in his eyes. I understand. She looked at him. But Robert would probably want me to try. Daniel cried, openly, the kind of tears that come after decades. Susan walked toward Emily. The two women stood together, not rivals, not enemies, sisters in grief. I looked at Robert's chair. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something new. Not anger, not betrayal, peace. Because the truth had finally arrived. Not perfect, not easy, but complete. As Daniel prepared to leave, he stopped at the door. "There is one last thing." We all looked at him. He reached into his pocket. A sealed envelope. Robert's handwriting. Only 4 words appeared on the front. "For Maggie alone." I held the envelope in my hands for nearly 10 minutes before opening it. Everyone had gone home. Susan returned to her apartment. Emily drove back to the hospital.